Welcome in to another edition of the JMU Sports News Podcast. I'm Bennett Conlon, joined by Jack Fitzpatrick. Jack, the Dukes, they have some quarterbacks now.
They've got a duo coming in. One, a hard-nosed, tight end type runner that's going to run downhill and make his passes count when he does pass them. I mean, just a very, I don't even know how you describe Matthew Sluka. I won't bury the lead. Matthew Sluka, he commits. And then a very, very good quarterback from the FCS ranks in Camden, Coleman, Richmond starting quarterback this last season, won a QB battle about 3 games into the season, took over the job, only lost 1 game as a starter at Richmond. He should be fantastic. It's going to be a really, really, really fun next few months until week 1, because I imagine it'll be much like last year where Chesney does not give us any information.
Yeah, fascinating turn of events here. We were aware that they were on the Coleman train, right? That they were talking to him and it was a possibility. And then I was sort of joking with you yesterday, I think on Tuesday, before they both committed. I was like, what if they also went after Sluka? Like, what if they got both? And we were both like, that'd be crazy. Like, that's so crazy to even think about. And then they did it. And I don't know, those are 2 starting caliber quarterbacks that are absolute studs. We'll get into what it means for Barnett and all that stuff, but pretty huge deal that they've, taken care of now the most important position on the field. It makes it seem like they can actually make a legitimate playoff run now.
Yeah, JMU was kind of in contact with Coleman early on in the process. They reached out to him before the bowl game, have kind of monitored that situation. And they played the long game with both Sluka and Coleman. I imagine Sluka they've also just been in constant contact with, and everything worked out where they ended up getting it. I imagine they were pretty upfront with both of them, letting them know that they were recruiting another quarterback, another starting caliber quarterback with each one too. They didn't just like surprise it on them of like, oh, you signed? By the way, Sluka's coming, and Sluka's, oh, by the way, you signed. Coleman's coming. They were probably really upfront with it all. And it shows that both of these quarterbacks are prepared for a competition, and it should be really fun. And we'll get into what this means for Alonza Barnett's injury status as well, because now that's all circling. But first, we want to let you guys know that BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number 1 source for online betting in the 2025 year. Whether that's not how they wrote it, I just said that in a weird way. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. Largest selection of odds, everything from football, basketball, college basketball, because those 2 are different, NHL and UFC. BetOnline is the number 1 sports betting source for the new year. From touchdowns, 3-pointers, and hat tricks, BetOnline has you covered on every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here.
That's exactly right.
So initially, I was like, all right, Bennett, it's time that we begin these podcasts leading with basketball, because what women's basketball is doing is so much fun to watch. If you want a good, just kind of palate cleanser when JMU men's basketball are on the road, I recommend just putting women's basketball on.
I did that the other day, and it really changed my mood in such a positive manner.
That's awesome. But we can't start with Hardwood. I mean, football continues to dominate the headlines. It feels like JMU is becoming more in an FBS program, because at FBS programs, football dominates the calendar 365 days. At the FCS level, we would stop talking about football after the FCS championship game, and we wouldn't start talking about football again until a little spring ball, and then really in August. It's dominating the calendar. Here we are, January 15th, and we're leading, and we'll probably spend a majority of today's podcast talking football.
Yeah, it's a big portal haul, and I wouldn't say I was underwhelmed by their portal haul, but there were still some question marks that I had going into January 14th. After this, it's like, whoa, I put you on the same level as Tulane, Memphis, Boise State. On paper, if they can keep a lot of these guys, like the expectation should be contending for a Sun Belt championship. And the ceiling realistically is a college football playoff appearance. Like, this is a good roster.
The Nick DeGennaro, the Richmond wide receiver announcement that was just silent the entire time, came out of the cut. Coleman announces, Coleman commits, Sluka committed earlier in the day, but it went Coleman, and then maybe 30 minutes later, Nick DeGennaro committed to join Landon Ellis. So you
Mhm.
have two former Richmond receivers. Landon Ellis is this young guy. He has 2 years of eligibility, a rising junior. Um, lots of potential there, and he showed some fantastic flashes during his time at Richmond. Nick DeGennaro is an experienced baller.
He's
Like,
so old.
you got one more year of eligibility with him,
Yeah.
and he was the number one receiver at Richmond. He's a guy that you can plug in, and he's immediately going to make a big impact. Landon Ellis likely will also make a big impact, but there's a little bit more youngness to him, I guess you could say. Where Nick DeGennaro, I think he's our age playing college football still.
I was looking this up, and I had gotten my brain so much into a pretzel that I thought he was out of eligibility, and I thought he needed like a lawsuit to play because he's played that many years. He started his career at Maryland 2020, so that year doesn't count, and then he redshirted in 21. So essentially he played or spent 2 seasons at Maryland, played a little bit, not a lot. In those 2 years, neither of them really count. So then he played 22, 23, 24, and he still has 25. So it'll be his 6th year of college football. He's been a stud at Richmond for each of the last 3 years, especially I would say the last 2, and he was really incredible in 23, a little bit banged up last year and missed 4 games, but still was highly productive all 3 seasons. He's a number 1 type of receiver. He goes well with Landon Ellis, obviously. He knows Camden Coleman. He's just really good. Like, I was a little concerned, not overly concerned, when Cam Ross left for UVA. Cam Ross had 7 drops last year, a team high. DeGennaro had 1 drop over the last 2 seasons, and he debates that with us on, on Twitter. He's not sure it should have been a drop or should have counted as a drop. I think he like makes more sense for the system. And to be honest with you, I think he is a better, more reliable target than Cam Ross.
Yes, it is. I I was pumped about Coleman. Sluka was interesting, but DeGennaro really made me go, oh, they figured everything out on offense. Because the wide receiver position was the position that
Yes.
going into the spring window, I was like, they're gonna have to probably try and get one more guy, maybe 2 more guys, like a project maybe, and then a guy that you can hopefully rely on. That answered that question. DeGennaro commits, and it's just like, okay, the offense is shored up. Had someone on Twitter ask, what about the offensive line? I don't think you have to worry about the offensive line whatsoever because you have McMurtry coming back. Speaking of DeGennaro, who's in his 6th year, McMurtry going into his 7th year of college football. You have him coming back, Sweezy, Robel, Joseph Simmons, Malway,
Mawali, I think they added the
Mawali,
left tackle.
Mawali, the Valdosta State left tackle. Josh Toner's coming back.
Mhm.
The offensive
And then
line's
they
pretty
added
set.
Zach Greenberg,
Zach
the UNC
Greenberg.
transfer. O-line looks good. And then the skill position / quarterbacks are stupid, dude. So Cam Coleman and Matthew Sluka at quarterback. Running back, we haven't talked about like in months because it's just been set, right? So it's Io Adays coming back. George Pettaway is coming back. You have Joby Mallory coming back. Wayne Knight coming back. They're 4 deep, like with great running backs. The receivers, now they have Ellis, DeGennaro. They added Jalen Sanchez from Villanova, who I'm high on. Ymir Knight's coming back. They added Collins from Tusculum, who we talked to, who's like a burner with size, who can make big plays. And he was joking with us that like anytime he touches it, he feels like he can make a big play. He had 1 carry for 50 yards and a touchdown. Like
He's the modern day OD. He's the modern day
he's
Gollison.
explosive. So they're loaded offensively at every position. They're deep. They also have some young guys coming in and returning, like Dylan Williams. We were talking about, like, we felt good if he was like a key target. He might, like, again, be battling for playing time, even though he's exceptionally talented. It's a great offense. Like, it looks loaded on paper. Really, really good.
And the really exciting thing with DeGennaro is you said he's been at Richmond for 3 years and he's been a stud the last 2. Who's been throwing him the balls the last 2 years? Coleman was in this weird timeshare with Kyle Wickersham 2 years ago as a true freshman. So Russ Huesman at Richmond loves using the red shirt. So loves playing guys the 4 games and then you don't play again because you can then retain the red shirt at the FCS level. You can play in the postseason too and still retain that red shirt. So it's a good way to give your guys an extra year of eligibility and get them a lot of game reps. Was trying to do that a little bit with Camden Coleman, I think. And then Coleman ends up having to kind of battle with Wickersham. Wickersham gets hurt. The Richmond starting quarterback, Coleman takes over. They essentially throw the same number of passes. Coleman had a little bit of an interception problem as a true freshman, but still had a lot of yards, had 1,161 yards, averaging 165 a game, which was the best among all quarterbacks who played his freshman year. And then he took a giant step forward as a sophomore last year, connecting with Nick DeGennaro, creating that relationship with Landon Ellis, who, oh, by the way, was his Richmond roommate. And now I imagine they'll be JMU Harrisonburg roommates. And that gives him such a leg up. Before we dive more into the quarterbacks and specifically each one, I do want to let you guys know that Cinnamon Bear Bakery and Deli, fantastic sponsors of ours. Next time you're in Harrisonburg, be sure to check them out. They're literally right across the street from the AUBC. You can park, get ready for a basketball game, and walk across the street to Cinnamon Bear Bakery and Deli, and you can check out all the fantastic stuff that they have over there. Give them a try next time you're in Harrisonburg. Tell them JMU Sports News, Jack and Bennett sent you. We would appreciate that so they can see a little ROI on this sponsorship and can hopefully get us more sponsors here in the near future. But thank you to Cinnamon Bear Bakery and Deli for being a sponsor of the JMU Sports News podcast. So I guess we go down the line. Let's go down the quarterbacks, the timeline. First, we can go Matthew Sluka. Then we'll go Camden Coleman. And then we'll break down what this means for Alonza Barnett, because I think there's a lot of question marks around it. But first, former Holy Cross UNLV quarterback Matthew Sluka. What do you feel about this addition?
Let's start with the NIL stuff, because I feel like that's been a huge topic.
Great call. Yeah.
Right. So he goes to UNLV, plays 3 games. They go 3-0. He's running the ball like a madman. I would not say he was completing the ball like a madman. 43.8% completion percentage.
You could say he was incompleting. He was incompleting passes like a madman.
So it was a weird 3 games, but they beat Houston and Kansas during that 3-game stretch. And then also, I think, Utah Tech, which is just an incredible 3 games to start the year. 2 Big 12 teams in Utah Tech. So they put up like 70 on Utah Tech. They beat Kansas and Houston with games that were really dominated by their defense. They had a nice defense this year. I think that was really underrated. But anyway, they win those. And then he posts like at 11 o'clock one night on Eastern time. So they're on the West Coast. But he posts late at night one night. I remember this coming in. And he was like, I'm sitting out the rest of the season, essentially saying that there were, agreements that were promised to him that were not, completed or made in full. So essentially, he was under the impression he was going to get a certain amount of NIL money. I think it came out that it was not in writing. It certainly seemed like. And then they didn't pay him what he expected to be paid. He got labeled by some people as a quitter, as somebody who was bailing on his team. I don't think that's fair at all, right? That's just my opinion. I think that he thought he was going to be paid X amount of dollars and then wasn't paid. For him leaving Holy Cross, I think he certainly viewed it like a job. And if anyone took a job and they weren't being paid, I don't think you would keep doing the job just for like loyalty to your new coworkers. So it didn't work out for him there. He leaves, spends the rest of the year like working on his game with a quarterback coach in the offseason. He posts like once a month on social media. It's just him retweeting like his quarterback guru that he's worked with. So he's working on his passing, working on all those things. I don't think he's a quitter. If you watch him play, he's a really hard-nosed guy who puts his body on the line, plays hard. So it was a weird thing. I don't think JMU fans should be concerned about that at all. I think it's a little bit overblown. And also, I think him coming back to a coaching staff that knows him is going to help a lot. It's going to help him gain trust in the locker room. And I think it's they know who he is. They know that he's not a quitter, that he played hard for them for multiple years. It's hard to say that a guy who ran for over 1,000 yards and is plays through physical injury and runs the ball for Holy Cross is not all about ball. He was playing the Patriot League. He cares about football and winning games. So I think he just got sort of the short end of the stick at UVA. I mean, not at UVA, at UNLV.
Well, a little Freudian slip there. Going back to your daily progress.
No, I was thinking. I've been spending so much time thinking about
Cam Ross and Sean Wyatt.
Yeah, how they stole those 2 guys and have that money coming in.
Quick little tangent. Isn't it funny that UVA stole Cam Ross and Tyshawn Wyatt, then JMU stole Nick DeGennaro, Landon Ellis, and Camden Coleman from Richmond? Like, it's just a pecking order.
I think UVA should have went after DeGennaro. Respectfully.
Yeah.
Like, that's the guy you want.
But no, I'm right there with you on Sluka. I think it all is very overblown because it is insane. Like, if you're not paid for a job, granted, should he have gotten a signed letter of something? Yeah, but that's probably on his NIL agent for not getting a signed contract and trying to figure that all out. That's why, I mean, you've seen the blowback, I imagine, with these NIL agents taking 20% of their contracts. I mean, that's what they're getting paid astronomically way too much to be doing, is to get that in writing. And then when Sluka figured out that things weren't going to be coming his way, I also love the UNLV fans who blindly support the Runnin' Rebels, who are like, with the announcement, we're in the replies of it, like, he's a quitter, he was getting paid, don't listen to him. It's like, yeah, he was promised like $100,000 and he got like $5. Not 5,000, like just $5. They gave him a crisp bill and said, thanks for playing, thanks for beating Kansas. But like, yeah, of course he's not going to play. And it's NIL. It's the Wild West. You have no idea. Like, there are no rules right now in it all. So I don't blame him at all. I would have quit too. And I would have eventually then rejoined my quarterback coach in Dean Kennedy, my head coach, my offensive coordinator. Dean Kennedy and Chris Smith were co-offensive coordinators in 2022, with Dean Kennedy holding quarterback coach responsibilities. That year in 2022, Sluka ran for 1,400 yards and passed for 2,500 yards. That was his best career year. He's looking to reclaim that. If he can kind of refine that type of vibe, potentially could go into the NFL draft and be a little interesting, become a Taysom Hill type or something like that. And if he has one more good year at the FBS level, could parlay that into a late round draft pick. Who knows?
He's averaged like, I want to say 6 yards a carry over his career or something like that, including sacks, because he's a quarterback.
You want the official number?
Yeah, what's he got?
He's averaging 7.2 yards per attempt in his career.
Does that include the UNLV or is that the Holy Cross?
That includes UNLV.
With sacks.
He
Like,
averaged 6.9 yards per attempt.
He's crazy. Like, he's an unbelievable runner. And I think when you look at him and evaluate him, and it sounds stupid, it's very much like a Bronco Mendenhall at UVA thing, but you have to view him more like a football player or like offensive weapon than you do a true quarterback, because you're going to see the completion percentage and be like, oh, that's concerning. I mean, at times it is.
Which it is. It was 43% at the FBS level.
Only fewer than 50 passes, 48 passes. So some of that, he's not throwing the ball that much. But also UNLV had like super talented receivers. So it's not great. But his ability to run, I think he had like 125 rushing yards against Kansas. His ability to scramble, lower the shoulder, do all that stuff is extremely rare for a quarterback. Like, he doesn't look like a quarterback when he runs. He just seems like a guy playing football. He's almost like another running back on the field. So he's going to play. I don't know if he's going to start, but you don't bring in a guy who can run like that and then leave him on the bench. Like, he will play, whether he's the starter or they have a package for him. He's going to play. He's going to be fun to watch, and he's going to make defenses stressed out because he has a very like rare skill set.
It'll be interesting to see how Sluka fits into the offense. It'll be interesting to see how Dean Kennedy deploys him, what they end up doing with him, because, oh, by the way, you also added an FCS standout quarterback in Camden Coleman. He announced his commitment yesterday, shortly after Sluka announced his. Played the last 2 years, like we said earlier, at Richmond, was the full-time starter about 3 games into the season as a sophomore, played in 7 games with 4 starts as a true freshman, has a lot of potential, rising junior, 2 years of eligibility. He excited to come in and compete. Should be really fun to see how it stacks up.
I like Coleman a lot. Like, his game's cool. You watch his film. I think he's a better passer than Sluka. Like, I think he's more accurate. I think he has a slightly better throwing motion. He seems to be able to do everything well. And you look at his PFF grades. The one issue JMU had last year offensively, or the major issue, right, is they sucked against the blitz. And we talked about that a lot. They were horrible against the blitz. Coleman's PFF grades, like against the blitz and when he's under pressure, are very similar and high. They're sort of in that like 70, 80 range when he's blitzed and when he has a clean pocket. Alonza Barnett, when he had a clean pocket, was phenomenal. And then when he was blitzed, his grade was like 35, or under pressure, he had like a 35 PFF grade, which is not great. So Coleman can do it all. He can run. He had 340 rushing yards and 6 touchdowns last year. He can throw it at every level of the field. He knows who are the two like top receivers now very well. Like, he's good, and he's going to have a legitimate chance to start. So to get him and Sluka feels like just an unbelievable boon for JMU.
It is. I don't think it could go understated how much of a leg up it gives Camden Coleman that they are bringing in Landon Ellis and Nick DeGennaro. You are bringing in his 2 favorite targets, should give him a big leg up in just the overall quarterback competition. He is a fantastic thrower of the football over the middle of the field. This last season, between the numbers, he went 21 of 24, 3 touchdowns, 455 yards. This is a Richmond offense that didn't throw it a ton either. And from the kind of intermediate to short passing, he is really very good. If outside left of the numbers, he went 5 of 10. Outside left short, 6 of 9, 58 yards. But over the middle of the field, the dude is electric. Intermediate center, which is that 21 of 24. He had a 96 PFF rating. The dude just knows how to sling it. And it's rare that you get a quarterback who's willing to go kind of effectively over the middle.
Yeah, so he's good at every level. And I think he had better stats for sure on those short throws than Barnett did, which I know is an issue last year that fans are like, why aren't they hitting those like layup kind of things? Coleman hits the layups. He can go deep. He can go intermediate. He can do a lot of things very well.
Behind the line of scrimmage and short down the middle of the field, he threw for 650 yards, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. Short or at the line of scrimmage to the left, he went 8 of 11 for about 70 yards, no touchdowns. And from the behind the line of scrimmage to short on the right side of the field, he went 22 of 25 for 173 yards, no touchdowns. I mean, that's just solid. And if you look at like NFL passer rating, that's hovering right around 100, which is pretty darn good.
Yeah, like they have the receivers now too. They're like, you can call a screen. He throws an accurate screen, and they take it for a bunch of yards because you have a lot of really good offensive linemen. Like, they have built an offense in year 2 of Chesney and Dean Kennedy that has the pieces to just call like basic stuff, and your players are going to be so much better than who you're facing on like an average G5 game that they should just go make a bunch of plays. And last year, I don't think they had that consistently at receiver.
Yeah, I'm pumped. I think Camden Coleman, I think he's going to be quarterback 1. And I think he'd give Alonza Barnett a run for his money.
Yeah, he would. He would. I think it's going to be a great competition because there's so many fun like layers and wrinkles. You mentioned that Coleman's got his top 2 targets. Kennedy and Chesney have built a scheme for Sluka. Like, they both have areas where there's an advantage. It's going to be an incredible competition. I think in some capacity they both have to play, especially in that first FCS game.
I would not be shocked if like they're running 2 quarterback sets. Maybe this is just way out of left field and this isn't possible of happening, but like I can imagine a 2 quarterback play where both of them line up in the backfield, and then like maybe Camden's in the shotgun with Sluka to his right, and they run one of those like weird like spin motions that then put Sluka. But like there's going to be some weird stuff happening when you have 2 quarterbacks with vastly different skill sets.
Yeah. Also, Sluka takes some heat for his passing, and I would agree that like he's not like an NFL tight window thrower.
You mean the 43% completion percentage?
But his career is like 65 passing touchdowns to 16 interceptions. So he doesn't like, he can be inaccurate at times, but he's not really putting the ball in harm's way a ton. He does a nice job of throwing touchdowns compared to interceptions. He likes to stretch the field deep. Like, if you put in Sluka on like, let's say it's 2nd and 1, and you act like you're going to run some power run up the middle, and then you like leak a tight end out, he can make that throw. He's not like
Yeah.
incompetent. You know what I mean? Like he's maybe not like some of the throws Barnett made last year were pretty absurd. Like, whoa, that's like an NFL caliber throw.
Yeah.
I don't know how many of those you're going to get, but he can run and he's capable of making those layups. Like he's fun. And then Coleman can really sling it.
Yeah. Coleman is that passer. But I just did the quick math as you were talking. Sluka in his career, including UNLV, he has scored 104 touchdowns, both rushing and passing. He has turned the ball over just 38 times, which means he's averaging 2.7 touchdowns for every turnover. Let's round that up to 3 touchdowns for every turnover. Like he doesn't throw interceptions. His one kind of issue, I guess, is fumbles. He had 4 in 3 games this last season. Career high of 6 fumbles in a season in a single season. He did that in 2023 and 2021. He was on pace to shatter that if he played the full season against UNLV with UNLV. So maybe kind of keep an eye on fumbling, but I think that's just a kind of it happens when you run the way Matthew Sluka runs.
Yeah, and it's a high volume too. Like he runs the ball a lot. So having, let's say Sluka's the starter, having Coleman is a pretty big deal for depth too. If Barnett can't go, we'll get to that in a second. But having 2 good guys when one of your quarterbacks like is a psychopath when he's on the field is good because he's never sliding. Like he will never slide. He doesn't slide.
Average 13 designed carries a game. 13 designed runs.
Because watch. It's crazy to watch him play football.
And then he had 6 scrambles as well. So he ran the ball 15 times a game last year. That would have led JMU in rushing attempts per game.
And I think he threw it 48, right? So that's right around 15 a game too. So he's basically like running it per game as much as he was passing it for UNLV.
Insane. But I am intrigued to see how Matthew Sluka works out. I'm very excited to see Camden Coleman and his integration into this offense as well. That brings me, though, to the status of Alonza Barnett.
This part sucks, right? This part's no fun. Seems pretty clear he will not be ready for the start of the season, and I think he's probably going to take a medical redshirt in 25.
I've heard from sources familiar with the situation, I'll get all technical with it, that he won't be ready by fall camp. And I think if he will not be ready by fall camp, this is me now speculating. If he is not ready by fall camp, they will redshirt him because you have the 2 quarterbacks you just brought in through the transfer portal. You don't want to rush him back. Yes. And I think something we said a lot during the season was, I can't wait to see him have an off season as quarterback 1 to develop. If he's not going to be ready by fall camp, he won't really be doing football related activities until then, until August, September, like even just doing football related activities. Then who knows when he'll get cleared for contact. I would be shocked if we learn anything about this injury as time goes on. They were tight-lipped about Tyshawn Wyatt. They were tight-lipped about what happened with Chauncey Logan. They've been tight-lipped about every injury. Dylan Morris, we had no idea was even hurt. I'd be shocked if they really say too much about what's happening with Alonza Barnett, but he probably will not be playing in 2025.
Yeah, it sure seems that way. I don't think you bring in 2 high-level quarterbacks if you think the guy who started for you last year with some honorable mentions good to go, unless you're a lunatic.
Psychopath.
Because
if they had brought in just 1, I think I'd be like, okay, he might be ready because they just want to bring in competition for him. But bringing in 2, it's like, okay, we want JC to sit another year or maybe another 2 years. Alonza's not going to be playing. Sound Off interviewed Billy Atkins the other day and made it seem like Billy Atkins has played his last snap at JMU. Good for Billy. Go out on that high note because he was a redshirt junior, had another year of eligibility if he wanted to take it. But I think he could see the writing on the wall. And now you bring in 2 quarterbacks to battle and be that QB1 and 2 and fight it out. Yeah, that just tells me that Alonza Barnett will not be playing in 2025.
Yeah, it seems that way, which is a huge bummer. And I think the crazy part is like the system is so weird. You can't even really speculate about what's going to happen in 2026 because there's too many scenarios, right? Like if JMU balls out, Chesney could be gone in a year. Coleman could follow him. Coleman could stay. Barnett could follow him. Barnett could stay. Coleman could also like. There's just too many scenarios of what could happen if they play very well. But hopefully, Alonza Barnett is able to play again in a JMU uniform, and this isn't the end of that part of his college career. But also, yeah, it sucks because like he started the year incredibly well, had his ankles banged up, which I think hurt him in the middle toward the end of the season. And then he also had this knee injury where he missed the bowl game. Like it just stinks for him because he's worked pretty hard to improve and get to where he is. We were excited to see him play as QB1, but it's a business, right? Which is why Chesney goes out and adds 2 starting caliber quarterbacks. And I think it's pretty clear to us that they view JC Evans as still developing and like a backup option. I don't think it's like a 3-way, like a legitimate 3-way battle to start.
No, I think JC has the potential to be really good, but I mean, they see him still as a raw passing talent because even in the bowl game, according to reports, is that they didn't call a single pass play for JC Evans. The one he checked out of a run play into a pass at the goal line. So technically, Dean Kennedy did not do a single passing play with his freshman QB.
Yeah, I mean, you look at he has 1 career passing yard because he did check out of it and throw a touchdown on that little 1-yard pass. Sluka has 65 career passing touchdowns, right? So 65 times more passing touchdowns.
Good math, man.
Than Evans has yards. So there's just a certain level of experience as a passer that Sluka and Coleman have that Evans doesn't, that he would have to have such an incredible spring and fall camp for them to be like, yeah, we think you're the starter to go beat Louisville in week 2.
Yeah.
Unlikely.
A ranked Louisville, probably.
Yeah. He is good, though. Evans is good, and having him as like QB3 is pretty absurd.
Yeah. I mean, dude would probably be started if we were talking about this off the air. If JC Evans was being recruited by Chesney at Holy Cross, late flip. It was fun on signing day last year. If he had ended up going to Holy Cross and Chesney had stayed at Holy Cross with Dean Kennedy and everything, JC Evans probably would have been the starter or had gotten a lot more snaps at least and would be going into this offseason as like a QB1 potential at Holy Cross.
Yeah.
Just because I think it would have fit the system and a perfect kind of heir apparent to Sluka.
Yeah, and if Sluka gets dinged up this year, like I'm sure they're going to have an Evans running package again because he's got that in the bag.
Yeah, because he's already burned his red shirt. He got his red shirt last year. He did not play in 4 games, so he's could be a redshirt freshman if he wants to move up a year as he is a rising redshirt freshman. You get what I'm saying. All right. That brings us to listener questions. We'll probably touch on a few things multiple times. I imagine we got similar questions throughout kind of what we just hit. We'll hit them quickly, go through it here at the 33-minute mark of the podcast. Before we get to that, though, we're going to step aside quickly for a break, a quick word from some sponsors, and we'll be right back with listener questions on the other side. Welcome back into the JMU Sports News podcast. Jack Fitzpatrick alongside Bennett Conlon. Bennett, you ready for our first listener question here?
Yes.
From I thought it was from Don Palumbo. My bad. That'll be the next one. He did reply to one of these somewhere. This one's from Daniel Merriman. What defensive portal edition? I love Daniel. He knows where we're going to talk about on the podcast, and he's like, let me make sure they cover all the bases here. What defensive portal edition do you think will become a star next season? Can I call out Daniel, though, really quick?
Yes.
He used addition, not addition. Like,
tough scene. I've seen his GPA. We can't be having that, man. Daniel's a certified genius out here.
But what defensive portal edition are you most excited for?
I'm an Xavier Holmes guy.
Yeah.
Just putting that out there. Defensive end from Maine, sort of going to fill the Eric O'Neill role, I would assume. Had great stats at Maine. He's a dog. We talked to him on the YouTube channel. So he's my guy. But they've got some good options.
Mine is JT Kwame Yao.
Yeah, that's a good one.
For a few reasons. Great name. I mean, 10 out of 10. JT Kwame Yao. Fantastic stuff. Secondly, just seems like he's like a dog who just loves ball. And the reason he was at Shepherd, a very good Division II program, was because like he just picked up football as a sport like 4 years ago. And he's just like relying on pure just athleticism these last few years. And we were talking with him on our YouTube channel, and he was just like, yeah, now I'm like going in the film room and trying to understand tendencies and things like that. It was great just talking ball with JT. I think he can be a real problem at that linebacker position.
I like him a lot. Yeah, that'll be a good one. That's a good pick.
This is from Kevin. On the recently updated depth chart projection, you had QB1 as Coleman or Sluka. You can find
what
that
it's going to be in week 1.
You can find that over on JMUSportsNews.com. They can't take our credentials for that one because we had no access with that. Understanding
right.
they'll likely have to packages for both. Who's your 2 early favorite as QB1 between the two? Mine's Coleman. I put it in writing. I tweeted it yesterday. I want it on the record. Coleman will be QB1.
I'll take Sluka.
Hater.
I think they're both really good. I'm just going to take Sluka.
Okay, fair. Okay. This one is from Don Palumbo. 2 varying style quarterbacks, a number of receivers from the portal, and a packed running back room. What do you all think the style of offense will be from Dean Kennedy next year? Dual QB system with a package for Sluka, a straight up competition. How does AB3 fit into this potentially in 2026?
I don't know, man. Like, it's a lot. I was thinking about this morning. It's a lot of mouths.
You just wake up, roll out of bed, and you go, man, how is Jamie going to feed all these mouths?
Basically, though, like, they're 4 deep at running back. Like, you better get our boy Joby the ball. I don't care who you added at quarterback.
Joby should be running back 1. Let's be honest. Joby should be running back 1.
I'm envisioning a package, and hear me out here. You've got Sluka at 1 running back position. You have J.C. Evans as the quarterback in shotgun. You also have him flanked by Joby Mallory. That's 3 big boys. What's he going to do? Who's going to carry it? Who's going to block? Right? Tell me about that, man. They could get crazy with this. And I think
that would be like a full ton of human in the backfield.
Those are some big dudes. But to answer the question, that did not. I guess they could just run this like J.C. Evans, Sluka, Joby power run game. But I think it'll depend on who gets the starting quarterback job. But whatever they do, they have to get the receivers involved because they're too good to just be like, we're running it 80% of the time. Like, they have really good receivers. So I think they're going to try to find some sort of balance with like a pound them in the mouth running game. But also like Petaway can zip around. They got, oh my God, they got so many options.
And you know who we haven't talked about like at all? You mentioned him earlier, but Iowa Dayton.
Yeah. What's he going to do?
He had like 5 touches this year, gets hurt. I think he ended up getting surgery, if I remember correctly.
I think so. He's good.
He averaged like 6.5 yards per touch at North Texas. And then you have Petaway, who averaged like 6 yards a touch last season. You have Joby Mallory, who literally all he does is be good, and they refuse to use him for some godforsaken freaking reason. You got Wayne Knight. He's exited the portal. He didn't even enter the portal this year. He deleted his Twitter. Wayne Knight doesn't have a Twitter anymore.
That's sad to hear.
Wayne Knight has exited X. How is Chesney's former quarterback, Matthew Sluka, supposed to be starting quarterback? This is from Jack's Fan 22. I'm assuming that name is because he's a fan of me.
That sounds plausible.
How is Chesney's former starting quarterback, Matthew Sluka, supposed to be starting quarterback if JMU just got a starting quarterback from Richmond? What an interesting hour.
Yeah.
I think we answered that a little bit earlier. It will be interesting to see how the competition plays out. Kind of going back to Dom's question, I think we'll see a quarterback 1, and then we will see Sluka used often.
Yeah, if Sluka isn't quarterback 1, that's got to be their plan, right? That Coleman's their quarterback 1, but they're going to have a package for Sluka.
Yeah.
But if Sluka's the guy, I don't know that they necessarily are having a Coleman package.
I agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah. AJ said, with the 2 additions at quarterback, what other position group should we be looking out for? What are our weak points? Nothing, baby. College football playoff. Woo! Buy your tickets now, baby.
You could always add offensive line depth. So maybe something there. I think the real thing is defensively. I wouldn't mind another like defensive lineman or two, and then maybe another corner. But they're pretty good at most positions right now. So like if you look at the spring portal, Chesney's probably only going to offer guys who are going to come in and like could start and are that good. Like I don't think he's trying to add a bunch of like random depth pieces just to have bodies. He's going to be like, okay, are there any holes? How can I fill them? But there don't seem to be many, if any, right now.
Spring portal was Ray Williams, Chris Sheeran a year ago. So expect kind of, grad transfers who want a shot and they get a shot at JMU. I would agree. I think D edge, D line, tackle, anything along the defensive line, just for depth purposes, they loved kind of rotating the guys. So that I think just getting as many bodies as you can who are capable of rushing the passer is always and stopping the run is always necessary. Garrett Lamb, you ready for a curveball?
Yeah.
So pumped for baseball to start next month. What are your expectations for the 2025 season?
I don't know. Have you looked at them at all?
Bennett's been grinding transfer portal tape. Are you
grinding like Ravens playoff stuff? I don't know, man. I don't know anything about them other than that. Like I have my questions that they're going to be able to replicate last year's success.
Yeah, they have. I think they're picked middle of the pack in the preseason poll. I think around 7th. That's kind of where I think they'll be. We'll dive into them more as it goes on. I know a month before the season, now that transfer portal will wind down a little bit because classes start in a week. So that means once portal season will be done in a week. And then we'll sink our teeth into some baseball as we begin crossover season. People talk about the fall to winter crossover season being crazy. No. The winter to the spring crossover season is 10 times worse or 10 times like more aggressive.
They did bring in a pretty sizable amount of transfers, which I think will be interesting, including our guy, Corey Dowdell, 6'3", 310, can smoke a baseball. Do you remember that one?
Why does it? Should I remember it?
He tweeted it, and we had talked about it way back when he did, and we were like, well, that's a big dude. That's a big boy. It wasn't anything like deeper than that, I don't think.
I was like, yeah, I remember roughly. Yeah, 310. Zachary Baker, with McMurtry coming back and the quarterback additions, what is the floor for wins in 2025 with the difficult schedule?
Oh, things can spiral. I'll say 7.
Things can't spiral. I would be disappointed if they don't touch 8.
That's fair. That's also very fair.
I will also be disappointed if they are not in contention for the Sun Belt title come the last week of the season. You can lose all of your non-conference games. No, you can't, because I want to be in the college football playoff.
They should win 10 games. Like
just win out. Just win out. It's that simple.
You play Liberty. Sluka visited Liberty.
Hopefully he got all their intel.
Got all their intel. They're going to roll out Ethan Vasco, who's known to have a good history against the Dukes. So I think JMU fans probably feel pretty good about that one. Washington State lost a lot. Louisville's good. I don't know.
That could be the signature win, though. You throw that on the old resume, a top 25 win. Beneficial for JMU to be playing Louisville in week 2 when they still are riding the preseason high.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I don't know how good Louisville's supposed to be next year, so I assume they'll start the year ranked, win their first game, stay ranked, and then lose to JMU.
There's a lot. I would say there's a decent amount of pressure on Chesney because of his own recruiting efforts. This team is loaded. Like assuming they keep most of them and don't have some like horrible spring departure.
Yep. You know how in the Marshall post-game press conference, he's like, I can't wait to sit back and judge you guys on how you donate to our NIL collective and how you guys do. You judge us for what we do on the field. I can't wait to judge you. All I got to say is I think we performed a lot better than he did.
Fans cooked. All right.
Yeah, fans cooked. This is all the fans. He wanted us to judge. We're judging now. We did a good job. So go ahead. Pat yourself on the back, Bennett.
I bought the bourbon, remember?
You did, that's
I got a Sluka. I bought the Cam Coleman Matthew Sluka bourbon.
that's how the collective should brand it going forward.
They're loaded though. I'll go with you. I'll actually say 8. If it's under 8, man, it'll be alarming.
With the caveat that they have to be in contention over the Sun Belt title in the last week of the season.
They should be one of the best group of 5 teams in the country. Like, it's just unnecessary level of talent at certain positions. Like, they have too many good running backs,
too many good receivers,
too many good quarterbacks. Like, they're just really good.
If only they could like trade and be like, we want cash considerations for Sluka.
Yeah, they should try to make a trade midseason if they can and see what value they can get if they can add some defensive pieces if need be. They also have like an NFL caliber kicker.
Yeah, yes.
Like, it's just an excess.
And a punter nicknamed Kick-Fil-A.
Right?
Who was I talking to that they're like, we have to have the conversation. Is his name better than his nickname?
Me, I think.
Was it you?
Yeah. Lexington Matthews is a great name.
It is. All right. Justin Reed asked, with Sluka coming in, do you think that means they don't expect AV3 to be ready to go for the season? And will he request a medical red shirt to keep his last 2 years of eligibility?
Probably, right?
If he does not play, I'd imagine he gets a medical red shirt. I would be very surprised if Alonza Barnett plays in 2025.
Yeah.
It's such a bummer, man. Dude is clearly a mobile threat. This is from Matt Teichner. But can Sluka be effective as an FBS passer? Low completion percentage, albeit in a small sample size at UNLV. Does the timing of his signing suggest he was hopeful for a better gig, i.e. is JMU a backup plan? Do you think it's an open quarterback competition? So let me go one by one.
Yeah, hit him.
Do you think he can be effective as an FBS passer?
Yes, like to an extent.
You know what's funny? His worst game as a passer last year was the game against Utah Tech.
From a completion percentage standpoint.
No, from a PFF grade.
Really?
Like, not particularly close. His passing grade in PFF was 49.4 against Utah Tech. Against Houston, it was 65, and against Kansas, it was 64.
Do you have any drop issues in any of those?
No drops against Utah Tech. Against
that was
Kansas,
weird. He was like 8 for 17 for like $170 and 3 touchdowns in that game. So when he did complete it, it was just it was a lot of yards.
He averaged 9.5 yards per attempt. Huh. But I thought that was interesting that his worst game at the FBS level was against Utah Tech.
Interesting.
So he can be effective. Next question. Do you think JMU is a backup plan for Sluka, considering how late he signed?
Not really.
I
don't know. It's kind of hard to like say what a backup plan is. Like, I don't think like Georgia was like, hey, we want you to replace Carson Beck. And he was like, no, I love Bob Chesney. Like, I don't think that was on the table, but he did visit Liberty and Memphis. I think he's better than Ethan Vasco. And I think he's better than Brendan Lewis, who Memphis signed. So I don't know. Like, I think he could have went to either spot and competed for a starting job. Both of those are pretty nice landing spots in terms of quality of G5 football.
Also, you can call me dumb and correct me here, but it feels like unless you're like a top 10 transfer quarterback, a lot of these guys take their time in making their decision. Like, I haven't seen an announcement from Cole LaCrue, Mitch Haydinger, or
he's a Liberty boy now.
He's a Liberty boy, but it took him a while to make that announcement. So, like, unless you are the coveted quarterback in the portal, a lot of these guys, I feel like, weigh a lot of their options, kind of play it out, and we're seeing those transfer quarterbacks make their decisions now.
Yeah, he's not dating a Cavender twin, so he took a little time to decide where he might want to go.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Bennett. Do you think it's an open quarterback competition?
Yeah.
Dan Miller want to be or bad. Talk to me about Camden Coleman.
This is all you. You're the Coleman stan.
He is a passer of the football. He runs it well. He's effective. He did what he did in a Richmond offense that was run first and primarily just tried to control the clock. And they didn't want to put it in Camden Coleman's hands all that often. And I don't think it's because lack of trust. I believe it was just because that was the philosophy of Russ Huesman and that coaching staff. They were a run first type of school and type of program. Coleman, when he got his opportunities, was fantastic. He showed a huge step in maturity from being a true freshman playing in 7 games, making 4 starts, to his sophomore year where he technically lost the overall I mean, it was weird. It was a weird situation.
So weird.
Do you know what the Richmond quarterback battle was this offseason?
Yeah, he didn't start, right, against UVA, wasn't
He
the
start, and Russ Huesman's plan was to redshirt him this year because they burned it last year. And then
It doesn't make any sense.
Wickersham started the season, was a little shaky. I think he was a senior or redshirt senior. Was a little shaky, got banged up in like the 3rd game of the season. Coleman stepped in, and then for like 2 or 3 weeks, Huesman was like, Wickersham might be coming back, and then Coleman will go back to the bench. And then Coleman just like was so good, he just took the job, and they're like, okay, we burned the red shirt, and we're just going to have this guy be our QB1 for the remainder of his eligibility. Oopsies, he transferred. And now JMU gets the spoils of that. But I mean, he just made a really good jump from year 1 to year 2, played well, 13 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, only had 251 attempts on 282 dropbacks. Doesn't have that. His pressure to sack ratio came down a good amount. And that's a big number I look at. The dude is just a good thrower. He had 11 big time throws this last year, 4.3%. Not a ton of turnover worthy plays, just 7, which is 2.4%. All of those numbers better than Alonza Barnett from this last year. So I'm not saying he is definitively better than Alonza, but he showed growth from true freshman to sophomore, battled in some weird circumstances, and can throw a football really well, and is a good, elusive, mobile quarterback.
He's also big.
6'3",
Right?
220.
Yeah. Like I think they list Sluka at 6'3", 215 or something. So he's big. One of his runs, you can see, I think it was against Delaware, a touchdown run where he just like runs over a dude to get in the end zone at the goal line. He's big, physical, can throw it. Cam Coleman's kind of like the whole package. I was under the impression they were going to get Cam Coleman and like he would be the guy. And they brought in Sluka for a nice little competition. But yeah, I would not count out Coleman or assume that Sluka is going to be the starting quarterback because I think that would be a little bit premature because he's a dog, man. He's an absolute dog. The other thing, if you look at this year, he had 1 batted pass. I know that was a concern last year with Barnett at times where he got a lot of passes batted. Just
Did he?
1 for Coleman last year.
I don't recall that.
Let me pull Alonza's number for how many were actually batted.
While you're doing that, funny connection with Coleman and Barnett.
Yeah.
They were both class of 2022. They were the same recruiting class. Their high schools were 20 minutes apart from each other. So they grew up as like high school rivals and faced off in the North Carolina State playoffs, and had a couple run-ins during their high school days. So from high school rivals to college teammates, kind of a funny journey.
12 batted passes.
Jeez Louise.
Yeah.
You're sitting on that one. I'm saying this funny story about high school rivals becoming college teammates, and you're just like 12 batted passes.
Well, I think that's part of where it helps that like Coleman's 3 inches taller and his arms look longer. So like, he's throwing it a little bit higher up than Barnett was.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you got to add?
There was another funny one we got today from Dave Mitchell.
Quick. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was saying that Richmond doesn't like to throw the ball. I want you to guess the season high number of attempts this year for Coleman.
They did run it a lot. 23.
Shockingly, it was 38 against Lehigh, wow. But he only went over 30 in 3 games. The rest was 25 or less.
Wow. Yeah, that was a weird Lehigh game. They didn't have anything going in that one. Maybe not a great game plan.
Well, when they against Lehigh, he went 24 of 38, 203 yards and a touchdown, was his best graded game. And they just
really,
it was a very interesting game. Very interesting overall. But okay, sorry.
The one from Dave Mitchell that was cracking me up. He's follows us. think he lives in Worcester and has Holy Cross. Either went there or follows him. He asked if we're going to
Thanks.
be asked if we're going to be taking bets on Sluka versus Coleman. You already put yours on the record. A lot of guys that have watched a ton of high-end FCS ball would love that action. It's going to be such a fun quarterback battle.
It really is. And I love what Chesney did in this transfer portal window, because the fact that he had time and his coaches had time to like scout these guys, they found like FCS studs, Division II maulers, Division II athletes. They found like just diamonds in the rough. Last year, it felt like they were flailing for everything. Like the diamonds in the rough they
Yes.
did get, in like Jesse Ramil, he's playing in the SEC now, and all of this stuff. And then like they're sorry, I just got an email and it threw me off. Very funny stuff. Very funny stuff.
And I like how they get the quiet ads really well, where it's like they're just going through the motions. Then it's like, oh, Xavier Holmes committed without any fanfare. Oh, Nick DeGennaro committed without any fanfare. Oh, they added Sluka and Coleman without any fanfare. Eric O'Neill last year just sort of committed. So like they do a really good job with some of these like elite players where they're not posting a lot on social and they're just like, hey, I'm a Duke. And it's like, oh, shoot. Like, didn't see that one coming. That's what I said.
Yeah. Should be fantastic. All right. Do you want to move over to Hardwood now to kind of wrap things up?
Yeah, we can do some quick basketball, I guess.
Well, we'll start with women's, because the women's basketball team are a bunch of dogs. Peyton McDaniel continues to just do Peyton McDaniel things. Had nearly a 30-piece a few games ago, 29 points she dropped. They're 13-4, 5-0 in conference, 7-1 at home. I mean, they've just really made easy work of the Sun Belt so far this season.
Yeah, they've looked really good. Dominated Georgia Southern that last time out at home with the game sponsor of Pepsi, which is always a big one for the fans. I know that one gets people to turn out and get really excited.
Okay,
And then
Pepsi household.
they've got some couple road games coming up. I don't know. I'm still thinking they could run the table in the Sun Belt. They're that fun to watch. They're that good defensively.
They're good offensively too. I mean, they've got
Good
options. Kozlova's good down low. Rose Scott
Barnes
coming off
has
the
become
bench.
an absolute freak.
Yeah, when did that happen?
She's really taken a step this year. Superstar.
It's fun. It is a fun team to watch. So their next game will be today. If you're listening, likely you're listening tomorrow, which would be Thursday. They had a weird Wednesday, Saturday, different from their Thursday, Saturday that we all had kind of gotten used to start conference play. But they'll play Marshall and then Coastal, and then they're back at home on the 23rd, taking on Southern Miss, and then a game with Coastal on the 25th, which is a blackout game, but should be an opportunity to go. I mean, they could go into February undefeated in conference play.
Yeah, I might have to.
We're getting to a game.
Day before the Super Bowl, they play Ball State.
Yeah.
Interested in that because Ball State, that's that MAC challenge. They're nice. Ball State is nice. Probably the best team in the MAC. They beat Texas A&M by 13 earlier this year. They beat Memphis by 29. They beat ODU by 14. Ball State is nice. That game's at home. That's going to be a fun one. But yeah, they're a really fun team to watch. The men's team in Harrisonburg is pretty fun to watch on the road. It's not worth your time.
All right. So the men's team, they sit at 9-8. They lost their last two. Both of them.
I'm disappointed.
Both of them. Bennett, I want you to guess where these last two games occurred.
Oh, gosh. I'm going to say on the road.
Yeah, they lost their last two on the road after a 3-game homestand where, you guessed it, they went 3-0. Fun fact, JMU 5-0 in their last 5 home games. They are 0-5 this year on the road.
Yeah, they're 9-2 at home and at neutral sites and 0-6 on the road, which is pretty bad.
Team doesn't turn you over. They rank 319th in the nation in forced turnovers. Not very good. Just kind of from top to bottom, defense has been an Achilles heel. It's been optional at times. They rank 263rd in effective field goal percentage against. Teams are shooting 52.7% against them in effective field goal percentage, which is 2.7 percentage points above the national average. Not very good. They still live by the 3 and die by the 3. 38.2% of JMU's points this season have come from behind the 3-point arc, which is 44th in the nation. They don't do it well down low. They rank 315th in the nation in points by 2-pointers. Yikes, yikes, yikes. Offense just looks clunky, looks disjointed at times. They do enough, though, offensively to win games if their defense was able to make stops.
They also, like, the thing that bothers me a little bit is they looked like they didn't give a damn in the App State game. Like, they got down and just kind of folded. Like, there was never a point where it's like, oh, I think they're going to make a run. In the first half, it was like, okay, they're hanging on a little bit. And then it was like, oh, I think they're just dead. And they were. They were just completely dead.
JMU, at one point, early on in the first half, I'm trying to find the exact score of what it was. I can't get the exact score, but they had a pretty sizable lead, and it was a 50% chance to win. Like, it was at a point in the game where, according to Ken Palm, could have gone either way, 50%. And then from there, it was a free fall. And going into the second half, App State had a 97% chance to win. And that happened in a period of about 12 minutes.
Yeah, they just got, like, kind of demolished. And it's like the other one, they played South Alabama on the road, and like 5 minutes into the game is over. Like, they were down like 15 after like 5, 6, 7 minutes. It's like, oh, they're just dead. And I think that's what's a little bit concerning. It's not so much just that they're losing some of these road games. It's that, like, the game is over at halftime. And you can't have that. Like, they're too talented to have the game just be over at halftime.
Insane.
But they're at home this week.
So, a couple wins against
11-8.
Teams that they just played. But yeah. All right. That's Hardwood update. Anything else you got to add?
No, I don't think so. Portal season is exciting.
I love portal season. If you've made it this far, thank you so much. And if you enjoy this content, here's a shameless plug. They're not paying us anything, mainly because it's me doing it, so I'm not going to pay myself. But you can listen into more interesting JMU breakdown over on 106.1 ESPN Richmond. If you're in the Richmond area, you can also find that wherever you find podcasts. Right here, you can subscribe to the JMU Sports News podcast feed. It's the home of To the House. Unfortunately, season 1 has wrapped.
We got to get some Delvin takes. We got to do like a bonus episode with some Delvin takes on the quarterback.
I like that idea. Get the occasional To the House segment on this podcast to kind of keep it rolling. But while you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify Podcasts, you can just type in Talkin' Dukes as well and subscribe there. And that has really fun interviews, really interesting interviews. We actually will be talking with Pat McMurtry later today. Excited to talk to him about why he decided to come back for his 7th year and what he sees kind of out of this offensive line and things of that sort. So we get a lot of exclusive interviews over on Talkin' Dukes. You can find that on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or if you're in Richmond, 106.1 ESPN Richmond.
I need to know about his academic schedule, because sometimes when they get to like that 7th year, they can keep a light load. And that seems like a dream, right? To like hang out at JMU, ball on this great football team.
You have to be a full-time student, right?
I think so, but sometimes you can take like it's almost like elective level. I don't think the Holy Cross guy's doing that, because like they're they're pretty smart. But I would. If I was a 7th year guy, I would be taking like golf and fitness and all these just nonsense classes.
Not to dive into this too much, right? But you have to be a full-time student this semester too. So he has to be a full-time student in spring of 24 and then also a full-time student in fall of 25.
What's his major? I'm looking this up. This is important.
He graduated from Holy Cross already.
Cyber intelligence. So you know what? He's probably taking it seriously and preparing for.
But he's going after a master's now.
Well, he's just going to be really good at cyber intelligence. Ask him if he can like hack into your system or something.
Okay, we'll do. Hey, Drew, this is Jack. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us. I know we want to talk football now, but I do have to know cyber intelligence. Could you like hack me right now?
It's also like the least knowledgeable question you can possibly ask. Cyber, that means just like hacking, right?
Cyber. Did you grow up watching Cyber Chase, or is that what gave you the inspiration? Were you a PBS kid?
Are you a computers guy then?
Did you watch PBS growing up?
No, I only watched ESPN and film. I would watch game tape. My
That
parents would be like,
doesn't
"What are you up
shock
to?" And
me.
I'd be like, "I'm watching Tim Tebow."
As a
Game
4-year-old,
tape. That's a 4-year-old, yeah.
you're like, man, Tim Tebow, what he did on that jump pass at the end zone. Oh,
I was like, "Wow, I don't know if this guy's gonna make it in the NFL." My parents were like, "He's a leader," and I was like, "I don't think it matters."
his throwing motion's pretty broken.
No, it's throwing motion, mom.
It's pretty busted, if you ask me.
He's a good role model. I know. I just think he's gonna have to do that as like an SEC analyst. Anyway, a lot of good arguments at the Conlin dinner table, middle school and early high school about Tim Tebow's ability as a passer.
Why does that not shock me? Like, I don't know if you're making a joke or not, and that
No,
makes it
my
even
brother and I
funnier.
were like, I don't think he's the guy. And they're like, his leadership ability. And we're like, right, but he winds up almost. Doesn't work.
I actually think he'll be like, he might tap out like at AA Mets farm system, actually.
Yeah, we were floating that take, and I was like, I don't know, he just feels like a one dramatic playoff win kind of guy, but it's mostly yards after catch. And they're like, I don't know.
All right. For Bennett Conlin, I'm Jack Fitzpatrick. Thank you so much for tuning in to the JMU Sports News podcast presented by Bet Online. We'll be back next week. I don't think there'll be any more transfer portal craziness. Famous last words, though. I do want to say this right before the end. Grad transfers can enter at any point. So that was a little interesting caveat that I had forgotten about with Cam Ross.
Yeah.
I thought the paperwork just took a month to be filed. And then I remembered grad transfers can transfer at any point. So transfer portal season's never officially over as long as you have grad transfers.
That's right.
All right. For Bennett Conlin, I'm Jack Fitzpatrick. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Have a wonderful rest of your day.